Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. This podcast has evolved over the 5+ years since it first launched. From now on, I'm going to be talking about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. And also mindset, of course, but mindset of all kinds, not just business mindset. I think. Things are changing for me, as you may have noticed if you've been following me online or listening to this podcast, so anything goes here. I hope you stay along for the ride. Thank you so much for joining us today, and now let's get into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 346. This is your host, Holly Worton, and I'm back with another solo episode. Today I'm going to talk about friendships that evolve, change, fizzle out, break up. This has been on my mind for the last couple of weeks, and so I think it's time I did an episode on it. It's something that I see people talking about online a lot. What do I do if a friendship fizzles out? Would I be wrong in breaking up this friendship? I actually just went on Reddit. There's this subreddit called Am I the Asshole? Where people write in a certain situation and get kind of voted on by the community to see whether or not they were the asshole in a certain situation. So I just searched for friendships within that because it's a topic that comes up all the time. And just browsing through this, would I be the asshole if I broke off a friendship over a flu vaccine? Am I the asshole for choosing to end a friendship and never explaining why? Am I the asshole for ending a friendship with my vegan best friend because she won't accept that I won't be vegan anymore? Would I be the asshole if I broke a no-contact request to end a friendship? Am I the asshole for wanting to set boundaries with my friend or end the friendship? Am I the asshole for letting this friendship bleed out? I could go on and on and on, but I won't. And there are many reasons why a friendship might fizzle out or might just be something that you want to end for whatever reason. I think this is very natural. So, this episode is going to be about how to recognize if a friendship is fizzling out and what to do about it. How to try to rekindle the friendship if you don't want to lose it, and what to do if a friendship is definitely over, like how to mourn the friendship and move on. So let's get into this week's topic. As I said, this has been on my mind for a variety of reasons. So first of all, I ran into a friend a few weeks back, and this is a friend who at one time I would have considered to be one of my closest friends, and the friendship has fizzled out over the years for various reasons. And I think that's a good thing. Like, I think we've kind of moved in different directions, we have different interests, and I don't think it was a bad thing. However, when I saw her, it was at this group thing, and she introduced me to this woman I'd never met before, and she introduced me to her as her best friend. And I was like, I've never heard of this person before. I had no idea you were friends with this person, and she's your best friend? And so that made me realize just how much, like how disconnected we've become, and how much the relationship had fizzled out between us. And it still kind of hurt. And so I stopped and I thought about that, and I was like, okay, what's going on here? And I realized I'd never really mourned the fizzling out of that relationship. So the relationship isn't formally over. When we see each other at events and things, like, we're very friendly. I look for, it's nice to see her, but we don't stay in touch at all in between those things, which is fine. But I'd never really mourned the fact that the relationship fizzled out, even though I don't mind the fact that it fizzled out. And so this is kind of one of my first points that I want to make. If you're in that kind of situation where you have a friendship that's just kind of died out slowly, like there hasn't been a formal breakup, there wasn't any fight, there wasn't any reason why you haven't seen each other, it just hasn't, been happening. And if you're kind of uncomfortable about that, even though you're okay with it having fizzled out, give yourself permission to grieve that relationship and maybe do a little ceremony or ritual or journal about it, or do whatever you need to do to grieve that fizzling out and recognize that you're okay with it and you can move on from it. I think this is a particularly weird situation because, we're still friendly. It's just we've moved from being friends, and again, what I thought at one time was close friends, to really being acquaintances. And that's something that I want to address here. Relationships of all kinds change over the time. So sometimes acquaintances grow into friendships, and sometimes friendships fizzle out into acquaintances. So again, this is a person that I'm not unfriendly with. We're not friends, but we're really not friends. We're more like acquaintances now. And that's fine. That's okay. But if you need to mourn that loss or that transition, give yourself permission to do that, because I have been feeling weird about this ever since, going to this event with that person. So that's one situation. Another situation is because I live near London and because I've lived in many places around the world, lately, since I live in the UK, it's been a great opportunity to see friends from other countries that I haven't seen in years. Because a lot of people travel, either go through London or travel to London. And so it's been a great way to see these people. And I've really enjoyed that. However, there have been a few people who I've noticed through social media have come to London and not told me about it. So whereas in the past they would travel to London, they'd be like, hey, let's meet up, let's get together. And we would, and it would be great. I've noticed sometimes that some of these people have posted pictures of being in London and, like I said, have not gotten in touch. And I never know what to do about that. Because, on one hand, I would have liked to have met up with these people, but clearly they either didn't have the time or didn't want to meet up with me, and that's fine. But I had this one friend in particular over the weekend. I noticed that she was in London, and there have been a few times, I want to say at least 2 or 3 times, that she's come to London and hasn't let me know about it. Now, the last time she came to visit, I thought we had a great time, but we haven't really stayed in touch. But still, she's the kind of person that I would love to get in touch, that I would love to see when she's in town. But because it's been 2 or 3 times that she's come to London and hasn't gotten in touch with me, I kind of feel like it's more an issue of she doesn't want to see me than it is she didn't have time to. So again, I haven't really known how to handle this. Part of me has wanted to reach out and be like, hey, let me know when you're in town next. I'd love to see you, but then I don't want to make her feel obligated to see me because that's awful. I don't want anyone to feel obligated to see me. And I know I have felt like that with certain people in the past. So I'm in that weird limbo where I don't know what to do. Do I just like the post and say, oh, hope you have a great time? But I would like to see her. So kind of removing myself from the situation, if I think about what advice I would give to someone else, like you, for example, I'd say, if you genuinely want to see the person, reach out to them and say, hey, I miss you. I'd love to get in touch. So let me know next time you're in London if you have the time. And I think this is the thing, give the person an easy out. If you have the time on your next trip, I would love to see you. And so since I know she's probably still here, I might wait until she's obviously not here anymore to send that message just so she doesn't feel obligated. But I'd like to meet up. So I think that would be my advice. Reach out, let the person know that you would like to meet up, and then recognize, of course, you have no control over what this person wants. They might not want to see you, so, give it a try and then be done with it if it doesn't happen. I think that's another thing. Sometimes friendships fizzle out and that's a mutual thing, and sometimes it's not a mutual thing. And I think that makes it harder. But you can really only know it's not a mutual thing if you make the effort and you reach out. The third person is someone who I really considered to be a good friend. and who has been really busy over the last year or so. And I think we've kind of caught up once in the last year, maybe twice. But I really miss this person. And so there have been a couple of times where I've reached out and I've kind of sent an email and said, hey, I miss you, let's get in touch. And no response. And so I thought, well, okay, maybe she's busy. Like, there was no reason why the friendship ended. It just kind of fizzled out. And I assumed that was because she was super busy. So we had some engagement on social media the other day. And so again, since she kind of wrote to me, she commented on a thing or sent me a message, I don't remember. But since she had kind of gotten in touch with me, I thought, I will attempt this again. So I responded to her and I said, oh, I really miss you. Thanks for commenting or whatever. And so she wrote back and she said, yeah, would you like to have a call? Let me send you a link. And I was like, oh, God. Like it hasn't, like the relationship had kind of died down, but it hasn't fizzled out. Like she's still interested in staying in touch. So I was really, really pleased that I kind of gave it another chance. And again, I wasn't being pushy with that. It was just once in a while I would send a message saying, I miss you, I'd like to get in touch. But the fact that she reached out to me, I think was what made me feel comfortable giving it one more try. And I really think this would have been my last try. Like if she hadn't responded in that way, I would have been like, okay, for whatever reason, it's not working. Maybe she's super busy. Maybe this is not meant to continue. But again, I'm really glad she said yes and we're going to have a call. So give it a chance, but don't be too pushy because you never know what's going on for the other person. And they may not want a confrontation. Maybe they just want to let it fizzle out, or maybe they've got stuff going on in their lives. We don't know. And if the relationship has fizzled out to the point where we haven't been in touch for so long, we may not know what's going on for them. Because of course, if people have a lot of drama or health problems or private stuff going on, they might not be sharing that on social media. So you might really not know all the stuff they've been going through. So those are my kind of 3 inspirations for this episode. That's what's been going on for me. Let's talk about you and some suggestions for how you can deal with your friendships. So, as I said, I've never used the word fizzle so often in such a short period of time. So as I said, sometimes friendships fizzle out, or sometimes you suddenly become aware that you want to end things, or sometimes it's kind of something that's gradually creeping into your awareness that the friendship doesn't feel good and it needs to end. Sometimes you're the one who wants to end the friendship, and sometimes it's the other person, and you may or may not be on board with this. Or sometimes it's mutual. Sometimes it just happens naturally, and both people are ready to let go. I've had different friends for different phases of my life, and this is totally normal. I'm looking at my notes here and I'm realizing I wrote, I've had different friends for different phases of my lives. So maybe this is something I've been experiencing in all of my lifetimes. Probably it is. This is totally normal. I've lived in several different countries, so there's some people that I'm just geographically far away from, and it's hard to maintain a relationship. So as I said, sometimes acquaintances will kind of deepen into friendships. Sometimes friendships turn into acquaintances, and that's fine too. I think these are natural evolutions of a friendship or an acquaintanceship or any kind of non-romantic relationship. And I feel like I have to say, I have been shocked at the number of times I've met up with friends that I haven't seen for years, sometimes in decades, and it's been absolutely fantastic. I mean, a few years ago, a friend of mine whom I hadn't seen since high school, so that's 1991, was in London on business. We met up for lunch, and it was so good to see her. I've known her since, I think, 2nd grade, since we were 7 years old, but I hadn't seen her since, again, 1991. It was so good to see her. She was in London on business, so we didn't have a lot of time, but I could have hung out with her all day. It was really, really good. It just felt so good to see her. Another friend, back when I was living in Argentina, she was in Argentina on holiday with a friend whom I'd never met before because she wasn't from high school. Again, I hadn't seen her since 1991. We had such a good time. We met up for coffee. We sat there for 5 hours talking. And then we ended up meeting for lunch the following week. And again, it was like a couple of hours of just great conversation. So it shocks me the times that I run into people or I meet up with people that I haven't seen in 20 plus years, and it's so deeply satisfying. Another friend I just met up with in London, I don't know, like a month ago or a couple months ago. I don't even remember what it was. Might have been last year. My sense of time is not very good. But she was in London with her husband. I hadn't seen them in like 10 years. I hadn't seen them since their wedding. And before that, I hadn't seen her very often since high school. It was so good to see them. Like, we went out for lunch and then we went out for drinks, and it was just really deeply satisfying. So sometimes you might not see people for geographic reasons or lifestyle reasons or whatever, and you think they fizzled out into acquaintances, but then when you meet them again, it's so absolutely lovely. So that's also something to take into consideration. Sometimes, you don't see people for 20 years or 25 years, and then you do, and it's just wonderful. So anything could happen. But that was possibly a bit off tangent. So let's explore some reasons why a friendship may end. Sometimes you just grow apart. So you might have different interests, like maybe you're really into rock climbing and you stopped doing rock climbing, and so the relationship kind of fizzled out because that was the thing that you had in common. Or maybe commitments have changed, like you had kids or they had kids. That's a big friendship changer, especially if you don't both have kids. I find that a lot of my friends that have had children, I see them less and less because their lives are crazy busy now. And, I'm busy too, but not that kind of busy. I have a lot more flexibility. So the friendship might just grow apart because of lifestyle changes. You've changed your hobbies, you have different interests or different commitments, or you've had major lifestyle changes, like maybe you got married or had kids, or you got into a relationship or whatever. Your lives may have changed. So maybe you were friends through work and you're no longer working together. Or maybe you're friends from school and you're no longer going to the same school. So I'm still in touch with my high school friends on Facebook, but I don't often see them except if they come to London on business or holiday or for whatever reason. And that's fantastic. Friends from college, same thing. Don't see them very often. Friends from grad school, same thing. I don't live in the same country as them, so I only get to see them when they happen to be in London, or I happen to be in California, which doesn't happen that often. I know my lifestyle's a bit weird compared to most people's because I've moved around a lot, but these kind of situations apply. The person might have become an obligatory friend, like someone that you no longer enjoy being with, but you do so out of habit or because you don't know how to end the relationship or let it fizzle out. That's happened to me in the past too. There have been friends that I've kind of kept in touch with because I didn't know how to let go of things. So yeah, that's not good. And to be honest, a friend of mine said this to me once because I was talking to her about this other friend that I didn't know how to kind of end things with, and things ended up eventually fizzling out. But she said to me, would you want someone to call you out of obligation? And I was like, oh my God, no. So look at it that way. Would you want someone to be quote unquote friends with you just because they felt like they should or they were supposed to or they were afraid to break it up? If not, and I'm going to assume the answer is no, don't do that to someone else. Give yourself permission to let things fizzle out or, let go of the friendship. So those are kind of natural reasons why a relationship or a friendship might evolve or change. But sometimes your values become wildly different. Maybe they change their political leanings or their religious leanings, or they adopted a new set of values based on a relationship that they're in. And suddenly their beliefs are very much opposed to your beliefs and you don't like the person they've become. Or maybe they've shown their true colors. Maybe they were always that way, but they had a mask on and they've dropped their mask and let them know who they really are. That's a reason to end a relationship. Sometimes you may have realized that your friend or the person that you thought was a friend is actually really toxic. Maybe they're a narcissist. Maybe they insult you. Maybe they demean you. Maybe they lie to you. But for whatever reason, you realize that when you come away from a phone call with them or meeting up with them, you feel worse than when you went there to begin with. That's not a good situation, and that's a clear sign that you want to cut that person out of your life or let that relationship fizzle. Depending on how toxic or difficult they are is going to depend on your strategy. But if someone really makes you feel bad, that's not someone that you want to have in your life. And that's definitely a relationship that you want to declutter. So as I said earlier, if you don't want to lose the relationship, try to rekindle it. Tell them you miss them. Suggest a phone call. Suggest a meetup. Was there a misunderstanding? Apologize if you need to. Apologize even if you don't think you need to. Apologize even if you don't think it was your fault. If you want to try to rekindle the friendship. But be aware that the other person might not want to. Again, you can't control what they want, what they think, what they feel. We can only control our own wants and needs and emotions. So give it a try, give it a couple tries, maybe give it 3 times, and then let it go. You know, like I said, with this friend, for whatever reason, we haven't been in touch. I really missed her. I reached out a couple of times. It didn't happen. I'm really glad it happened this 3rd time, but this honestly probably would have been the last time I reached out, just because I didn't want to push something that maybe she didn't want. And, you know, I'm talking about this process being very indirect because that's how I have tended to approach this. But you could very easily reach out and specifically, explicitly say to the person, you know, what's going on? Like, what happened to our friendship? What do you want? Like, do you want to try to rekindle this or not? That's another way of dealing with it. And that's another absolutely valid way of dealing with it. If you're good at clear communication, I think I am, but I don't know, in this friendship situation, I've been very kind of subtle about my communication with people and how I deal with things. But it's absolutely valid to be very clear and explicit with the other person. I remember this guy I know, like breaking up with a friend of his best friend years ago. This was about 10 years ago. And I remember thinking, oh, that's really weird. Like that seemed really kind of awkward and unnecessary. Like he formally broke up with this guy who was his best friend. And I don't know, you know, maybe that's the right thing for you to do. Maybe it's unnecessary. I personally, again, would have let things fizzle out. Thought it was a little weird that he felt the need to formally break up, but that could be the right solution for you. You know, clearly it was for him. The important thing is to not take this personally. Friendships and relationships naturally evolve over time. The fact that someone wants to let go of the relationship with you does not mean that you're a bad person or that you've done something wrong or you're awful and no one wants to be friends with you. Like, don't use this. Don't let your mind gremlins grab a hold of this and use it to beat you up for whatever reason. Friendships naturally evolve over time. And people change and friendships change. Also, I would say don't view it as a failure. Like, again, understand that relationships change over time and not necessarily the way we want them to. So, you know, maybe someone else wants to let go of the friendship and you don't. You know, there's nothing you can do about that because, again, we can't control what the other person wants. We can only control how we feel about it. So, again, find closure for yourself. Take the time to mourn the friendship if you need to. Do a little ritual, journal about it. Acknowledge your feelings. Acknowledge the fact that you're mourning the loss of this friendship or the transition of this friendship from friend to acquaintance or acquaintance to nothing. Give yourself permission to feel the feels, to feel whatever it is you're feeling, whether it's disappointment or sadness or anger or whatever. Acknowledge your feelings, give them space, and then do what you need to do to find closure or to accept the transition. And then focus on your other friends, your current friends, your new friends, or find new ones. Go online, go on meetup.com, go to a meetup about something that you like or that you want to learn or that you're interested in or your hobby and do a new thing. Go on Airbnb experiences and do an experience. Take a new class. Take up a new hobby. Do a new thing to find new friends that are aligned with your current lifestyle because if you think about your life, I'm sure you've had many different phases of your life. You've had, school, you've had high school, you've had university, you've had maybe grad school, job, your first job, your next job, whatever, your business. And different friends for different phases of life. And sometimes old friends, you can carry them on through the new phases, and sometimes you can't. And sometimes friends change into acquaintances, and sometimes acquaintances change into friendships. It's evolution. And you have a hand in that to some point, and in another point, you don't. Because if another person doesn't want to be friends, there's really not much you can do about that. But, say goodbye, either literally or figuratively, and move on. And again, it's not a bad thing, but give yourself time to grieve and to mourn the friendship if you need to. And focus on your current life. Focus on your current friends or find new ones. There are plenty of places to go to meet new people. I mentioned Meetup. Meetups are usually very reasonably priced. A lot of them are like $5. Some of them, I go to this author's meetup in London that I love, that I started going to at the end of last year. It's £1. Yes, I have to, pay for a train ticket to go into London, but there are local meetups as well. So find new friends if you need to, but focus on the present and focus on what you want for the future in terms of friendships, and let go of the past. Let go of past friendships, let go of past relationships that no longer are right for you for whatever reason, even if it's the other person that decided they didn't want to continue. So I hope you found that useful. Let me know what you thought of this week's episode. You can find me online at holly@hollyworton.com or social media and get in touch. I would love to hear from you. I would also love for you to join me on Patreon if you head to patreon.com/hollywharton. That's patreon.com/hollywharton. You can join me there. Membership starts at just $1 a month, and you get exclusive access to stuff I don't share anywhere else, including a monthly Q&A. If people have questions, you can ask me. And also, depending at the tier that you signed up at, ebooks. I'm making my ebooks available to people there, and certain tiers also get a copy of my printed books, paperbacks, workbooks, that kind of thing. So again, love to see you on Patreon. That's patreon.com/hollywharton. Thank you so much for listening. And remember to visit hollywharton.com/346 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollywharton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.